This is the Doing Business School Abroad podcast. I'm Ken Globerman, and if you're interested in going to business school somewhere out of your country, this is definitely the podcast series for you. Episode 8, Your Personal Statement. Welcome back to the Doing Business School Abroad podcast series. This is episode 8. And we've talked in the last episode about writing, about your general writing samples. In episode 8, we're going to talk about one specific essay known as your personal statement. So we've devoted one episode just to this because we feel that it's important enough to do so. So the first thing is the personal statement is about you. Well, everything's been about you, but this is really about you as opposed to how you feel about, geopolitics or other events going on in the world, or how others would perceive you and all those other questions that we talked about in the different essay questions that you can expect to see part of the application process. The personal statement is about you, and it's important to differentiate what content you put in the personal statement, in your personal statement, from the other essays that you write. The good news is that most schools ask for a personal statement, so you'll be able to reuse this across several applications. So you'll only have to probably write it once, unless a school particularly asks you to focus your personal statement on something specific. Otherwise, this one essay will give you a lot of miles for a number of different schools. So let's just talk about some tips on how to make your personal statement as great as you possibly can. So first of all, know that this essay is all about you, right? So you want to be writing about yourself in the first person. I would just say be careful, though, not to have all your sentences start with I. I think one of the things that's really tricky about writing about yourself is how to adjust your writing style so that rather than saying I a lot, like I like this, I feel that, for example, and trying to find other ways to express yourself in the first person rather than starting with I. And one of the quick tips there is to adjust some of your sentences to be less passive and more active, and say, for example, like, I'm making this up. I like Audi cars, for example. I could rewrite that as Audi cars are really appealing to me, right? So there's a way that you can say more or less the same thing without having to start the sentence with I. So you'll want to probably write several drafts of your personal statement. The first draft, you will, you won't worry about these little grammar issues so much, but then you'll try to tighten them up and vary your language as you write second and third and fourth revisions of your personal statement. But that being said, it's important that you do understand that this essay is about you. So you're writing about yourself, you're writing about your likes, about your value, about what value you'll bring to the community where you're applying to, and also the value the community will be bringing to you, right? So it's sort of a symbiotic type of relationship, and you want to spread that message. In the personal statement, you also want to be clear about why this is the school for you, right? So you need to have done your homework and make a case for why this program, whether it be a master's in management, a master's in finance, or an MBA, why this is the school, why this is the program and why this is the university that really you fit with, right? That fits well with you and who you are. So you want to think deeply and plan ahead and think about what that answer is going to sound like. Like what, more than you want to have a few factors kind of explaining that on a couple of different dimensions. You also want to use this personal statement as an opportunity to highlight what you've accomplished in life up to now, right? Not to say you want to write an entire essay that demonstrates how wonderful of a student you were since you were a child all the way through your undergraduate experience, but you do want to highlight some of the expertise and achievements that you've picked up along the way, whether those be academic achievements or professional achievements and professional expertise. So think about which of those would really dovetail well in the sort of graduate school environment, and so and which would fit in, and highlight those. Don't worry. I mean, I don't believe in being overly. You don't want to sound obnoxious in describing yourself, but you also don't want to worry about being modest, because you don't want to cast any doubt that there's something that you're ambivalent about. So think about being confident without being overly cocky in your writing here. I think then you want to talk about how you having this degree would help benefit others around you, whether it be people in your workplace, in your profession, in your industry in general, or if you want to get even a little bit more esoteric, in the world in general, right? So, for example, if you are if you're a Polish national and you've spent your whole life growing up in Poland in a small secondary city, and now you're looking to apply to a master's program in management at a really nice university in Western Europe, you might talk about how you will pick up attributes and characteristics at that program that you could then bring back to Poland and perhaps help shape society around you here, given that Poland, is clearly a little bit behind in this sort of private sector development vis-a-vis Western Europe. You'll, of course, want to talk about how this degree is going to help your career specifically, right? So how will you advance specifically in whatever you're looking to do? So if you want to work in the packaged goods sector, and that's where you started and you want to go back to it, perhaps a master's in management is going to help you be a more effective leader in the future, and something you can take back to a dynamic work environment to then help lead product teams more successfully. I think then you want to think about writing about what you think you're going to get out of this degree from a personal perspective. Find out what other students have to say about the program. So, for example, again, let's say you're coming from a country where not many people have migrated to whatever school you're applying to. You might want to check if there's any students there currently from your country that you can actually have a conversation with. I mean, technology goes a long way now, so it's really easy to either look on LinkedIn, for example, or some other websites or social media in general, and find someone who's either an alum of the school or currently studying at the school that you could then reach out to. And people are usually pretty friendly in that environment and are willing to help. So think about how you can do that, and then think about you interviewing them. What questions do you want to ask them? What do you want to get out of that conversation? So plan that ahead, but of course, be mindful of their time. You don't want to overburden them, right? I would say then focus on things that as opposed to things that people want to hear. So, people can read through when you sort of are writing cookie cutter stuff that starts to feel like it's not really your character, right? So be careful not to focus in on overloading sort of those types that type of content, and focus on what you're passionate about and what you know well. As we talked about in the previous episode, you definitely want to plan, right? We've talked about planning your essays in episode 7. So here too, you want to plan. You want to have a really nice outline of what you want to get across to the reader. Every paragraph has a purpose, right? So if you're going through a progression of your life, don't bore people by getting bogged up in details. And of course, you want to start by introducing more generally at the beginning what the purpose of the essay is and what the sort of overarching theme is. And of course, in your last paragraph, don't forget to sum things up. Never in your last paragraph, when you draw your conclusions, should you be drawing in new information. Regarding the language that you use, you definitely don't need to overcomplicate this with lots of complex words. So if you're not a native English speaker, don't think that you have to go pull out a thesaurus and start like using more complex words that you actually may not be comfortable with. Keep it to plain language and just express yourself in shorter sentences with clear language. It's better that the sentences are shorter rather than longer. For example, my Polish students have this thing with writing run-on sentences a lot. And I think that's because in Polish language, that's a little more accepted. In English, it's especially in business English, it's not accepted. So short, succinct sentences that make sense kind of and hang together nicely. And then finally, make sure to get someone to proofread. Just like I said in our last episode, get someone to proofread what you wrote. And by the way, a little tip here also, even for yourself, I like to write drafts and then put them aside for a few days and then come back to them. Because we even get biased with what we say in the moment. And often then we come back like a few days later and we read what we wrote and we say, wait a minute, what the hell was I trying to say there? Because it's not clear, right? So that's the kind of stuff you often pick up just by putting down the essay and coming back to it in some time later. So first, you can actually be your own proofreader. And then when you feel you've got something at a place where you're happy with it, get some people to read it and make sure that it's clear to them. Make sure what you're trying to convey is clear. So that's really important. That's a really important last step here. So those are sort of the tips that I wanted to convey and information for you as far as writing your personal statement. There's lots of more content online, so you can find websites where you'll get all kinds of tips on writing your personal statement. Again, there are coaches and different companies that provide proofreading and editing help. No Brainer also provides that type of editing support and content review. So we tend to specialize working with people whose native language is not English. So we're particularly skilled with that. So if that's you, you may want to consider contacting us at No Brainer to see how we can possibly help you. That being said, I think that summarizing really quickly, your personal statement is another essay that's really important in the application process. It should be about you and let it be about you. It's written in the first person. Just don't repeat I all the time. It gets boring to read those sentences. Make sure that you plan well. Write about what you know. Write passionately about what distinguishes you. Write passionately about what value you'll bring to the program and what value the program will bring to you. Make sure you plan your essay in advance, write an outline, and structure it well. Proofread it yourself. Use tight, concise, simple language. And at the end, get it proofread by other people. Make sure that it's clear to them. So those are your tips for personal statement. Episode 9, we will talk about those important references, just like when you're applying for a job or applying for a homeowner's loan, or trying to buy a house or rent an apartment. Often references are part of the equation, and it's the same thing in the admissions process. So tune in for episode 9 coming next. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful day. This is Ken Globerman signing off. Take care. Bye-bye.